The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Quarterback controversy. Yeah, it's a silly one at that, but it is one. And it's indicative of how this whole mess is ending with Ron Rivera. We'll unpack all of that as we go through the morning. Steve Buckhantz is going to join me at 10:20, spreading a little bit of holiday cheer and talking about really bad NBA as the Detroit Pistons tonight go for the record. 27 consecutive losses, and they could get that in Boston. So that doesn't look good. Buck did some really, really bad Wizards teams, and we'll talk to him about, it's a really bad Wizards team this year. Buck's not doing them anymore, but we'll talk to him about what that's like to slog through a season and play games that you have absolutely no chance to win, and we'll talk a little bit about the quarterback change and so forth. Also, in the next hour, talk about something that happened 65 years ago today that was completely game-changing for professional football. And it's been called the greatest game ever played. It wasn't the greatest game ever played. There were 6 turnovers in this game. But the Baltimore Colts beat the New York Giants in overtime. It was the first overtime game ever played. They used to have ties during the regular season. And in playoff games or championship games, they had never had one that ended in a tie in regulation until this day in 1958. And Johnny Unitas led the Colts down the field and handed off to Alan Amici, and the Colts won, and football was changed forever. And I'll tell you about the significance of that in the next hour as well. Also, I've been pulling through these YouTube interviews that have surfaced. Joe Buck has done them with some famous people. We played Jerry Jones. We played Troy Aikman. The other day I played Kurt Warner. Jimmy Johnson got the highlights of his interview coming up at 9:20. And the story of his departure from the Cowboys, how it broke off with Jerry Jones. It's been told in a variety of ways over the years. The version that he tells doesn't sound like it was that acrimonious. Now, finally, Jimmy is going to go into the Ring of Honor for the Cowboys this weekend. But for years, we had been told through stories of people who covered that team, oh, yeah, Jerry got drunk at a bar one night and said to a bunch of reporters, 500 other guys could coach my team. That got back to Jimmy, and Jimmy got pissed off, and he left. Well, it's not exactly like that, according to the way Johnson tells it, and we'll get to that coming up. But the news yesterday, not unexpected. I was hoping to get this in before the Tony show. It came down to the wire. The news conference was supposed to start at 10:45. They got started a little bit late. So just after we threw it over to Tony, this is what Ron Rivera told the media.
We're going to go forward and have Jacoby as our starter.
And why did you want to make that?
I think this is probably a good opportunity for Sam to take a break. This is about, Sam's continued development. And, things hadn't gone as well as we'd like for them the last few weeks. So, we just think this is a good opportunity for him to watch. And, I think Jacoby, being the professional that he is and really playing the way he has really going to give, I think, Sam an opportunity to see some things and see how the offense goes. And I think it'll help him.
Is this for both the last 2 games or just Sunday?
We'll see how everything goes. But I think Jacoby's proven, that he is a very, very viable player in this league. And having him around has been, I think, excellent for Sam. He's really stood by Sam and helped Sam out a lot. And I think this is another way for him to help Sam continue his growth.
Sam has been very complimentary of the help that he's gotten from Jacoby Brissett. This is more pressing of Rivera. You've said all year that this is all about developing Sam Howell. You said before the start of training camp to John Keim of ESPN, if we go 8-1 this year and he, meaning Josh Harris, fires me next year and they win the division and it's 40 of the 53 players we drafted and it's the same quarterback, I'm vindicated. Send me my Super Bowl ring. That's the way I look at it. I want us to be right and to see this community have excitement again. So, and throughout the season, he's been asked about times where he could have put Sam Howell on the bench. No. He's got to work through all this. It's all about developing Sam Howell. And now, with 2 games to go, oh, yeah, he's tired. He needs a break.
Well, I just think right now things just, hadn't gone the way we'd like them to. And I think part of it, too, may be the fact that he's played a lot of football this year, going from one situation to the other. And it's been hard, tough football. And I think this is, an opportunity for him to take a breath.
No, it's not really the way it works, because if you're going to be a contending team, this is when you have to be playing at your best, and you have to be playing. So, he needs a rest. You think that they're saying that in Kansas City? You think they're saying that in Dallas? You think they're saying that in San Francisco? Brock Purdy's coming here a little banged up. He had a stinger on Monday night, and he's apparently due to start. I don't think it needs a rest. I think it's he's gone downhill, and now there are big questions about whether or not he's going to be the quarterback next year. He also said, this is not an indictment of Sam. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You're benching him. You benched him in the last 2 games in winnable situations, which Jacoby Brissett proved could almost be accomplished. And now you are ending a starting streak of 16 games. That's an indictment. You're benching him. Reaction from Sam Howell, pretty predictable.
Yeah, obviously disappointing, but it is what it is. He kind of he told us this morning, but yeah, it is what it is. I think at the end of the day, I just got to play better, and just gonna try to do whatever I can to continue to getting better these last 2 weeks, and try to learn as much as I can. Watch Jacoby play, support him, and try to be a good teammate.
When you watch the tape, does it feel like physically maybe you're not moving or doing the same things you were a month ago?
It's hard to say. It's hard to compare week to week. But I just think at the end of the day, I just wasn't playing my best ball. And it is what it is.
Clearly, his confidence is shot. Other players on the team said that, including Jonathan Allen. We'll play that coming up at 10 o'clock. But this is more from Howell, and this is him in a state of pretty much denial that his confidence is shot.
I know my worth. I know the type of player I'm capable of being. And this isn't gonna make me forget all the things that I feel like I've done well this year. I think I've shown at times that I can be a good player in this league, and those are the things that I'll fall back on, and those are things that'll keep my confidence up. But I know what I can do in this league. I know I can play in this league, and I just got to keep doing the things that I need to do to get better.
I could argue both sides of whether or not it's the right thing to bench Sam Howell. One side is that Ron Rivera's got the other men in his locker room who he's got to look at, and they know their best chance to win is with Jacoby Brissett. And he can't say, let's go out and beat San Francisco when they're playing the developing quarterback, and the quarterback they've seen at the end of the last 2 games has looked great. Not good, but great. So that's one side where you would say, yeah, certainly you have to play Jacoby Brissett. The other side of it is, if you're going to see this through, if you're going to, and, there's no way that Rivera can anyway look at this and say, well, the last 2 games could save my job. No, it's over. And if you want to follow through with your promise of handing over this ready-made quarterback to the new owner, then do it. Then do it in the last 2 games. Continue to let Sam Howell take his lumps, because you've been saying that throughout the season. They talk about leaving him in against Dallas on Thanksgiving Day when that game was well over. Jacoby Brissett, only on the last series did he play against the Dolphins in a similar type of blowout. So, it's one way or another. So I would say if you're truly committed to seeing this through and giving a full season to Sam Howell, give them the last 2 games. Sure, they're good teams. But if you believe that that's what this season has been about, and you're talking about, next year you're out of a job and the team looks really good and Sam Howell's a good quarterback and you're vindicated and you get your ring, well, go ahead and do that. So it just, rings hollow right now. And Jacoby Brissett, as good as he may be, what are you going to do next year? Because you got a lot of questions about who's going to be coaching and what kind of style are they going to run. Are they bringing back Eric Bieniemy in that offense? Okay, maybe. Then maybe Brissett is a fit. You decided to go get him because you thought he fit it. And Sam Howell is under contract, very cheap contract for the next 2 years. I think it's 1.2 next year and 1.3 the year after that. That's nothing. That's pocket change. So you bring him back, and with the number 3 pick, you have to draft somebody. If you think one of the top 3 quarterbacks is good enough to be a franchise player, you got to pull that trigger. You don't have a choice. I mean, just look back at what Ron Rivera did in his first draft when he took Chase Young, and Tua Tagovailoa was on the board, so was Justin Herbert. You passed on both of them And look at how that worked out. The ghost of draft past, by the way, is coming back this week. Chase Young with the 49ers, who, by the way, I was watching a lot of that Baltimore game on Monday night. Chase Young is the king of getting close and not wrapping up. If it was two-hand touch, he'd be great. But it seems like every time he gets his hands on the quarterback gets away. Brock Purdy, playing for San Francisco, even he can escape some of those. Not that they play against each other, but and then Lamar Jackson, probably one of the best. But even so, if he was this great physical beast, this specimen, this guy who could put pressure on the quarterback, you got to finish it. Got to finish the job. And he hasn't been able to do that. And so, you whiffed on that. And you could say, well, they got to develop the offensive line. And yeah, that's true. They can do all that. But they've got cap room to do that. And they can make some trades to do that. So if I saw a quarterback there, I would take him. And here's the thing about Sam Howell. Yeah, I mean, with Tom Brady, everybody in the league missed, right? I mean, he went in the 6th round. He did sit for a year. Bill Belichick didn't bring him into training camp and go, oh, my God, look at what we have here. We got to get rid of Drew Bledsoe. No, he started Drew Bledsoe, and Brady sat his whole rookie year. And then he started Bledsoe again in Brady's 2nd year, and he got hurt early in the season, and then the rest is history. With Sam Howell, you may want to try to convince yourself that you found this diamond in the rough in the 5th round, but there's a reason that he lasted until the 5th round. He doesn't process quickly. He holds on to the ball too long. He takes way too many sacks, and he throws interceptions. And could he get over those things? Yeah, really good quarterbacks do, and even Peyton Manning, 28 interceptions his rookie year. But if you just try and force this round peg into a square hole and say, yeah, everybody missed and we were smart. Well, if you're so smart, why'd you wait till the 5th round to take him? And when you brought him in, it was really out of desperation that you had to play him. And if you were so sure that he was the guy, why didn't you start him in the last game until the quarterback who was on his way out the door, Taylor Heineke, said, no, go ahead and start him, because Heineke didn't want to get hurt going into free agency. So they did that. And right now, you're at the end of the 2nd year of this guy, and I think we've seen who he is. Could there be a massive turnaround? Could he consistently do what he was doing in flashes during the middle of the season? I mean, the one game that everybody hangs their hat on is the Philadelphia game, which they lost. They didn't win. So I think that the Sam Howell experiment may carry over into next season, and even if they do draft somebody high, I think you may even make him the starter going into the season. But I don't think he's going to be your long-term answer, and I think we've seen that. And I think that's why when we went into the season, we said, we really got to see this whole thing through, because you see guys who look good initially. Well, Baker Mayfield at one point making commercials all over the place for Cleveland. The Browns finally made the playoffs with Baker Mayfield, but they saw enough regression to cut him loose. He winds up with the Rams, and now maybe he's had a career resurgence, and maybe he's going to get another contract with Tampa Bay. But there's no guarantee that even Sam Howell can develop into what Baker Mayfield is, and Baker Mayfield was the number one pick of the draft. Not everybody is stupid. Teams around the league are smart, and 5 go-rounds before he finally landed in Washington's lap. And for all the giddiness over, they found one, and it's not just fans. People like Dan Orlovsky looking at the tape say, this guy's really got something here. And maybe he does eventually, but you're going to have to wait it through for a long time. And if you do load up on the offensive line in the draft, and maybe they want to draft another tight end, probably they do. Those kind of things, probably have to beef up the secondary on defense. Defense, another story. But if all the things that you do to make this team better, you're still going to have to find that guy. And the search has to continue until you're convinced that you hit on one, till you finally did it. And even if you do, look at where you sometimes get to. Joe Burrow, he's not playing right now. Justin Herbert, not playing right now. So the constant search for that guy, look at what the Jets did. They sold their soul for a guy who's 40 years old who runs their franchise, who played 4 plays this year. It's a tough deal. And all the back patting and all the, hey, we found our guy and Sam Howell is the future. Yeah, you have to pump your brakes on that. And so right now, they're at the end of year 4 of Ron Rivera, pretty much where they were at the beginning of Ron Rivera, where you had an untested second-year guy and Dwayne Haskins didn't look very good his rookie year. Nothing else really around the roster. It was a bad roster. They backed into the playoffs. And over the course of the 4 years where he was supposed to build a roster and used to use that term until he realized he didn't build a roster, they're at this point now. We're at the end of a miserable season, still looking for a quarterback, still with a roster that's not nearly as competitive as it could be, and one that could possibly, compete for a Super Bowl 2-3 years down the road. It's a long haul. It's a long haul, and I think the feeling is, okay, let's get through Brissett. Let's get these 2 games over with. Make sure you lose them so you stay in the number 3 spot, and then clean house on January 8th. By the way, I heard my friend Kevin Sheehan say this yesterday, that Ron Rivera is 1 game over 500 for his career. So with 2 games to go, if he loses both of them, he will end his head coaching career with a losing record. He knows he's never going to be a head coach again. And if he loses both, he's a loser. If he wins 1, he could go out 500. If wins 2, he's over 500. So who knows? But that is where we are with Coach Ron as we head into the final game. So over the weekend, maybe this wasn't on your radar, and if you looked at the final score, you went, I guess the Packers had a little tougher game than expected. Yeah, they did. They played the worst team in the league at Carolina, and they won by only 3, 33-30. And there was a moment in that game where you go, whew, glad that didn't happen. And it involves Jair Alexander, who's a good player. I mean, he's been a Pro Bowl player for the Packers, second-team All-Pro 2020 and 2022 last year. And he's making a lot of money, and he gave up. This is just unbelievable. I don't care how much money you make. He gave up a $700,000 workout bonus this spring when he skipped the off-season program. Again, no matter how fat your bank account is, that's almost $750,000. That's more money than most people make in 10 years. And I don't want to work out with the team. I'll do it on my own. Okay, so he's on the team, and he's not a captain. They go out for the coin toss, and he decides he's going to make the call. And he says, we want to be on defense. Well, yes, if you win the toss, you do wind up on defense, but you have to say, we want to defer. And he was fortunate that the referee clarified with him, you mean you want to defer? Oh, yeah, want to defer. So Packers had enough. Matt LaFleur, after the game, didn't excuse him in any way. And yesterday placed him on the reserve suspended list, calling his conduct detrimental to the team. The GM, Brian Gutekunst, said the decision to suspend a player is never easy and not one we take lightly. Unfortunately, Jair's action prior to the game in Carolina led us to take this step. And they got this huge game coming up against the Minnesota Vikings. It's basically an elimination game. He's not going to play. He's going to lose the money. He will lose his base salary. So $60,000 is a game check plus the $38,000 he gets in a weekly roster bonus if he's active. So, I mean, that pales in comparison to what he gave up for his offseason workout bonus. But in discussing this with reporters, the open locker room yesterday, he's got his sunglasses on, his hood pulled up, and this is how he responds to what is an incredibly stupid mistake and may wind up costing his team a playoff spot.
Were you supposed to be a captain?
Yeah, I mean, it's only stupid, I don't think Coach knew I was from Charlotte, so.
So you just did that on your own?
I mean, it was like the guys backed me up, so they knew I was from here.
Did you realize you almost made a big mistake on the call, though?
What'd I do?
Well, you said we want to go on defense.
Yeah.
Which, in theory, they could have said, then you're electing to kick to to kick off what you would have lost the opportunity then to receive in the second half?
Yeah, no, I told them that I said I want our defense to be out there, and they all looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, I mean, it's pretty simple what I said. Like, I want the defense to be out there. They like, you mean defer? I'm like, yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody was laughing. I'm like, what y'all laughing at? Like, it's pretty obvious what I'm asking for.
So did anyone say anything to you when you got back to the sideline?
Why would they?
Are you kidding me? Now, let's recap what he did. He's not a captain. He decides he's going to go out for the coin toss because he's from Charlotte. He's in his hometown, and he figures, well, I can do what I want. I want to go out and call the... Now, I don't know why. Maybe LaFleur wasn't paying attention at the time, but I don't know why he doesn't say, whoa. You're not a captain. Come on back here. We've got thorough instructions for what to do with the coin toss. And really, one of the things that saved them was that LaFleur talks to the officials before the game, and they go over this. If you win the toss, what do you want to do? So they already knew that. But this dope decides he's going to make himself a captain just because he's from Charlotte, saunters out there, and makes the wrong call, and fortunately was saved by the referee who didn't have to do that. Whoa. Again, terrific player, but you just can't have that. You just can't have that kind of stupidity. Wow. Coming up, more comments from the locker room yesterday on the change of quarterbacks, what Jacoby Brissett said, Ron Rivera, Terry McLaurin, and John Allen. We'll get to that. Steve Buckhantz at 10:20. Don't go away. We are rolling till noon today. They're talking about sunny skies this afternoon. Come on already. It's 10 o'clock. Give us some sun. We haven't seen it in a few days. A lot of rain, but I guess it's supposed to be dry for a while, so we got that. Steve Buckhantz will be with me at 10:20. Hates weather people. Buck used to do the sports on Channel 5, and the lovely Sue Palco. Sue Palco was great, but Sue would go long with her weather forecasts, and Buck would have to start dumping stories. And boy, you want to get him started on weather people, it doesn't take much. Maybe I'll poke him on that. Coming up at 10:20. Meantime, we got the Hall of Fame finalists. Pro Football Hall of Fame be announced on Super Bowl weekend. There are first-time candidates in Julius Peppers and Antonio Gates. And before you say, oh, there he goes again, he's going to get mad and talk about Joe Jacoby. Jacoby was not eligible for this. His time already passed on the last senior ballot. I hope next year he gets an opportunity to go in. The older candidates for this year are Randy Gradishar, Steve McMichael, and Art Powell. If 80% of the voters say okay, they get in, and most likely they will. And hopefully Jake will be in that group next year getting in. But the other names that are on this for the finals are Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne, wide receivers. Also from last year, Patrick Willis, Andre Johnson, Dwight Freeney, Jared Allen, Willie Anderson, Darren Woodson, Devin Hester. I would say Brian Mitchell deserves, I think, consideration over Devin Hester. Hester has more career kick and punt returns, but Mitchell won a Super Bowl, and also he was an effective running back at times. Hester was a specialist, and yes, he did return a kick in the Super Bowl to get started against the Indianapolis Colts, but they got their doors blown off. So I maybe Hester should get in, but so should Brian Mitchell. Also, defensive backs Eric Allen, Rodney Harrison, running back Fred Taylor, and this one. Rex is with me today, and he played recently, so it's not. I'm not giving you an old-time guy. Do you know who Jahari Evans is?
No.
Neither did I. I had to look this up. He played 11 years with the Saints and 1 year with the Packers. He made 6 Pro Bowls, 4 times All-Pro. But, I think for offensive linemen, it's really, hard to disseminate as to how good they are. I guess it's sometimes a popularity vote. Now, Jake made only 2 All-Pro teams, twice an All-Pro and 4 times Pro Bowl. So it's two fewer Pro Bowls and 2 times less an All-Pro. But he was part of one of the most famous offensive lines in history, maybe the most famous offensive line, and they went to 4 Super Bowls and won 3. Jahari Evans won 1 as a rookie. So I don't know how this works, and not that offensive linemen shouldn't get in. I'm not suggesting that. But man, I'd heard of all the others, but Jahari Evans, who's talking about Jahari Evans outside of New Orleans? Nobody. The 15 candidates will be trimmed down to 10 and then 5 during the selection meeting early next year. And then the class of 2024 will be announced in Las Vegas on February 8th. And that's, I guess, a couple days before the Super Bowl. We'll find out who gets in. But this process needs to change. I've been saying this for a long, long time, but too many people are getting left out. And these are modern era candidates, which Jake is no longer a candidate for. Incredibly, his time passed, and he was a finalist a couple of times and had to go through that stupid dog and pony show that they do where they had the director of the Hall of Fame knock on the door of the people to get in. So here he is sitting in a hotel room with his family waiting for a knock that doesn't come. And then, we get to this. But, Hall of Fame. I'll tell you this about the Hall of Fame. And I was just recently at the College Football Hall of Fame. I spent a weekend with my son in Atlanta a few weeks ago, and we went to the College Hall of Fame, which we saw in a couple of hours. It's good. It's interesting. There were some nice displays. There was a film that we watched. But, again, we were there less than 2 hours and saw everything we needed to see. The Pro Football Hall of Fame you can easily see in a day. Easily. Baseball Hall of Fame, you really need 2 days to see it. And I would like to see more displays in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I don't know if they have the room for it, but I would like, it to be more stuff. More. You see some things in there. Jacoby's jersey is in there. You see the Mark Mosley kicking shoe. That's in there. There's a few things like that. But more of that memorabilia type of stuff. And I'll tell you something, and this is something I'm going to suggest to this new ownership once the season is over. I think there needs to be a museum for the Redskins, Washington football team, Commanders, whatever you want to call it, that they could probably put it at FedEx Field, get people to go there, not just for games, but go in there and see the displays and maybe have memorabilia for sale there, jerseys, hats, things like that, and even have an ability to buy tickets there. I hope nobody steals that. I like that idea. All right, let me get to this. Let's get some follow-up on the decision yesterday from Ron Rivera that after saying all year long that it's about developing Sam Howell, that Sam Howell's development is going to be first and foremost for this team, and even getting chesty with John Keim before the season starts, saying, quote, if we go 8-1 this year, that's what they did last year, and he, meaning Josh Harris, fires me the next year, and they win the division, and it's 40 of the 53 players we drafted, and it's the same quarterback, I'm vindicated, send me my Super Bowl ring. Well, there's not going to be a Super Bowl ring for Ron or anybody else next year, and it's much more in doubt about Sam Howell than it was a few weeks ago. I think that now that they're sitting in the number 3 spot, and assuming they lose the last 2, they will be picking number 3, and if they like any of the quarterbacks that are available at 3, they ought to take one, because jury is very much out on Sam Howell. And, the reason that he lasted until the 5th round is because the flaws that continue to be there still exist. They saw this coming out of North Carolina, holds the ball too long, takes too long to go through his progressions and decide where he's going to throw, takes too many sacks. Yeah, he's athletic, he's competitive, he's got a really good arm. There are a lot of attributes, but there are also things about him that cause teams to go, nah, not for us. So he's going to spend probably the next 2 weeks on the bench. Rivera was non-committal about whether Brissett would get both starts against San Francisco and Dallas, but Brissett's been there, done that, and ready to move on this week.
You understand the business side of it, that this league doesn't wait on anybody. You understand that you got to put your emotions to the side, your whatever it is that you're thinking that has nothing to do with the game aside, and get ready to go play in the game, because that's all that really matters. Just business, Solly.
As for Rivera, who says that this is not an indictment on Sam, when it's an indictment on Sam, because if you're going to ride with him where you hope to go, he ain't sitting in week 16 and 7 or 17 and 18 is the way, he's not sitting out the last 2 games. So he's asked, to grade him, what he has seen in the 16 starts that he's had under Rivera.
I think Sam has had some pretty good opportunities and has some pretty good moments. And I think there's been some good moments where he's learned a lot, and I think there's some moments where he's had to take a couple lumps. But he's a resilient player, solid young man who's I think has a bright future in this league. I really do, and I think he's a guy who can play quarterback in the NFL and do it well and do it at a high level. He's shown us some really good things, and as I said, this is something I feel and talking to EB and Tavita that this is something that we think is going to be a chance for him to take a breath.
Take a breath. That's not what quarterbacks do at this time of year. This is when they ramp up. This is about the perspective now on Sam, because Rivera's been selling all year. He's getting it. He's having to go through these things. But once he comes through on the other side, we're going to have something. Asked if that perspective has now changed.
It doesn't. I think this is part of the growth. If we played better and did some things better, and we're all culpable in this situation too. This is not an indictment on Sam or how my feelings towards Sam has changed in terms of I really do think this guy can be a really good quarterback in this league. I really do. But I also think that sometimes when things get tough and get hard and this has been a long year for everybody, I think this is a chance for him to take a breath. I really do.
All right. Perspective from two guys who have seen the parade of quarterbacks here. This will be the 9th different starter that Ron Rivera has had since he took over as head coach in 2020. But Jacoby Brissett becomes number 9. Sam Howell to the bench. Terry McLaurin, who's been very supportive of him, has, through all these quarterbacks, all 9 of them, he's been a real mensch about it, and that's why he's the leader on this team. And this is his take on seeing Sam, his friend, go to the bench now.
Obviously, it's going to be tough for anybody who, kind of has to watch from the sideline. But, I know he's ready just in case anything happens. And, I let him know after the game that I still got his back. And, I still believe in his ability to be a successful quarterback in this league. But we hadn't had any extended conversation since the change.
And now John Allen, the longest, outside of Tress Way, the longest defensive player for sure, on this team, been here since 2017. Sounding a little bit jaded here, but, kind of like this is the NFL.
It's the NFL. I've always, when I would talk to my dad when I first came in the league, he would always tell me all these stories around the league, and I would always say, I feel bad for the people who never have gotten an opportunity in the NFL. So it's the NFL. Sam Howell, he has a battle ahead of him, but at the end of the day, he has a demeanor, the mindset, and the work ethic to overcome it, and he'll be fine.
Now, the confidence. Sam Howell is saying he hasn't lost confidence. Tavita Pritchard, the quarterback's coach, says he has. We'll hear from Eric Bieniemy today. A lot of questions to Bieniemy about this. Rivera says it's his call, and I'm sure Bieniemy will say, although he said after the benching in the Rams, was it the Rams game or the Jets? No, it must have been the Rams game. That's the last time he talked. He was asked, whose call it was, and he said he confirmed that it was Rivera's call, but he also said, the head guy gets 51%. That sounded to me like I wasn't really sure I wanted to bench him. But they did, and they benched him last week, and it'll be interesting to hear what he says this week about the benching, but also about the change in quarterback. John Allen, he believes what Pritchard believes, what Bieniemy believes, what Ron Rivera believes, that there is now a crisis of confidence with Howell.
At the end of the day, you're looking at a player who's lost his confidence a little bit, and I've been in that situation many times, so he'll be okay. Obviously it's going to be a battle, but if anyone can do it, I know he can.
Defensive tackle loses confidence, a little bit different than quarterback losing confidence. No disrespect to John Allen, but I don't think it's apples and apples. So that's the take there. Meantime, we had a benching in Denver, and this, boy, as much as you may look at the Sam Howell thing and say, wasted year, trying to develop him, he's not the guy. Can you imagine if somehow Russell Wilson would have said yes to come here before they got Carson Wentz? Carson Wentz, he was expensive. He was $28 million, but he was easy to get out of, right? Because it was only guaranteed for 1 year, and they cut him, and they don't owe him another dime. This year wasted with Sam Howell. cheap. He's on a rookie contract as a fifth rounder. Doesn't mean a lot. And this was going to be kind of a bridge season anyway because you got new ownership taking over in July and, it was too late to make any changes. So what's happening at the end of the year with Rivera and his staff getting fired, that was going to happen inevitably. That was going to happen. But the Denver Broncos, who went for it and already blew through one coach, Nathaniel Hackett, lasting less than a season. Sean Payton comes in, just trashes Hackett, and blames all the poor play that they got out of Russell Wilson last year on Hackett. And now Sean Payton is having to bench Russell Wilson because of money. And here's the reason. This is sort of like what happened with RG3. Remember when Bruce Allen said it was a no-brainer to pick up the fifth-year option on his rookie contract? And at that time, as a first rounder, if you picked up the fifth year, it wasn't guaranteed. Now it is. Now, if you pick, that's why they didn't do it with Chase Young, but they did it with RG3. Problem was in that fourth year, you couldn't play him. You couldn't put him on the field because if he got hurt, that money would have been guaranteed. It's kind of the same thing with Russell Wilson. He would make an additional $37 million in guaranteed money if he can't pass a physical by early March. So if he gets hurt in either of the last two games, let's say, God forbid, he tears his ACL, he's not going to pass a physical in March, so you're going to owe him the money. Now, he's already guaranteed $39 million next year, and that contract that he signed, 5 years, $242 million, doesn't kick in till next year. Hasn't even kicked in, and they're looking for an exit ramp now. They're trying to get rid of him. He went to Twitter and he said, where's the full quote that he had? He said, God's got me looking forward to what's next. He's tied for sixth in the league in touchdowns with 26, but 18th in passing and has one 300-yard game this season in the 70-20 loss to the Dolphins. This is a disaster. He's 35 years old. And if you remember this, he was sitting in the stands or sitting in a private box, I guess, when Tom Brady won his Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And at that time, I guess he was like 32. And he sits there with his arms crossed, and he's really upset because he knows, I'm stuck here in Seattle, and they're not going to win a Super Bowl for me, and I want to be Tom Brady, and I want a bunch of rings, and I want to play until I'm 45. So he got himself out of Seattle. A good situation with a good coach there, and they didn't care. They went, we'll move on to Geno Smith. Goodbye. And he's gone to Denver. He stinks right now. He's probably done. He's owed an incredible amount of money, so it's all good for him. But his career looks like it's over. It's done. And for Denver to have invested like they did, $242 million, which they haven't even started to pay on, and now they're trying to get out of it. Whew. I mean, this was at the time that Washington was trying to get him. Dan Snyder was trying to hold on to his team, and he looked at the Wilson thing as a way to do it because he wasn't drawing anybody to the stadium, and he thought, well, this will get everybody rejuvenated if we can get a quarterback. And they offered a lot. I think they offered multiple high picks to get him, and Wilson just didn't want to come here. He went to Denver. He got Aaron Rodgers' guy as his head coach, which was a disaster for both of them. Supposedly, Wilson had his own office. He was keeping his own trainers on staff. I mean, and then when Peyton came in, he got rid of that, and it looked initially like it was going to work out after the tough start to the season where they lost to Washington and Miami hung 70 on them. But it's over now, and it hasn't even started with the contract. So with the disappointment of the way it seems to be ending for Sam Howell, it could have been a lot worse. Could have been much, much worse if that trade would have gone through. Steve Buckhantz is going to join me next, talk about the NBA and a little NFL as well, get his thoughts on the quarterback change. A lot to talk about with Buck. We'll get to that as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We're in for Tony today, rolling till noon. Steve Buckhantz joins us now, former voice of the Washington Wizards, all-around good guy, complaining, kvetching a little bit about JMU not getting into a bowl. You got your bowl now. You happy?
Well, after the performance, not really. I mean, they were outmatched by the Air Force Academy, which is, and I told all my friends that we do a thread, all my JMU buddies, my alum buddies. I said, listen, if you've never seen the triple option, then you don't know how to guard it. And I don't know how, I did Navy for many years, and all the academies run the triple option, and nobody knows how to stop it because A, it's hard to stop, and B, you never practice against it.
Yeah.
I mean, none of the major teams use it because they're throwing the ball down the field. I think Air Force threw 2 passes. One of them was a touchdown, and it's hard to stop that thing. And Madison couldn't do it. They went into the game, Andy. I don't know if you know the stats, but they went into the game as the number 1 team in the nation against the run. They gave up like 67 yards a game. That's number 1 in the nation of all the FBS teams. They gave up 60 yards on the first play from scrimmage. So no, they didn't. They didn't have their best game. Air Force was a better team, and it was unfortunate. But they did get a bowl, and they had a great season at 11-1 or now 11-2. So it was a good year. And the basketball team is ranked 20th in the nation. They're one of 3 teams in the country that are undefeated. They're 12-0.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy world in college basketball now. Where Florida International is ranked like 7 or something like that. So
yeah, I mean at this stage, and you never know. Look, Liberty finished I think 13-0 in football, and I want to say they were ranked 15th in the country. Now, are they the 15th best team in the country? Probably not. But if you're on the FBS level and you're undefeated, then you can't be ignored. I mean, somebody's going to vote for you. You just, that's the way it is. If they were to lose a game, or when Madison loses a basketball game, they'll probably drop out of the top 20. But for right now, they're undefeated. So yeah, at this stage of the season, when you have a record like that, you're going to be recognized.
And that concludes JMU Talk with Steve Buckhantz. And now we move on to the NBA. And there's a game tonight, which I'm really curious to get your thoughts on. I also want to talk about Ted yanking the Caps and the Wizards out of the district, and we'll get to that. But tonight, the Detroit Pistons, who have set the record with, 27 consecutive losses.
Right.
And have obviously the worst record in the league, an incredible 2-28, are playing the Boston Celtics, who have the best record in the NBA at 23-6. Crazier things happen, but I mean, if you're the voice of the Pistons and you're going into this game tonight, I mean, what are you preparing in terms of material when this game gets to be 40 points?
Well, the TV voice of the Pistons is a guy named George Blaha, who's been there for decades. I mean, he's been there since dinosaurs roamed the earth. And, they'll do what they do. You prepare the same way you prepare for every game. And then when it gets to be an embarrassment, if it gets to be that way, then you just find other things to talk about. That's all, Andy. I mean, and the game comes and it goes, and they'll play each other 4 times, this year, because that's what you do when you're in your own conference. Yeah, it's not fun when it happens, but so I haven't looked up the record. I want to say the 76ers had the worst record in history of the league at 9 wins for the season. And for a little while, I thought maybe the Wizards would break that record. They've got 5, I think, so I think they'll end up with more. But the Pistons with 2, they could shatter the record, and that's a record you don't want to be known for.
Yeah, actually, I think it's 7, but it was one of those shortened seasons because of the lockout. I get the team there, but the one of our youth, this is now 50 years ago, this was the 76ers who won only 9 games in a full season. It was Billy Cunningham had retired, Hal Greer was old, and I guess Fred Mad Dog Carter was their best player. And they were not competitive. And I wonder, you did some Wizards teams that were bad. I guess Jordan's year as the executive, they won 19 games. I mean, what's it like to slog through a season like that?
It's funny, Andy, because you don't realize what it's like. And I think this is probably true for a lot of things. You don't realize what it's like until you're out of it. Like people would say to me, man, 90 games a year, 82 plus, preseason, and if you get in the playoffs, that's a lot. And I would say, yeah, it's a lot, but you just do it. When you get out of it and you look back, you think, damn, that was a lot. That's a lot of games. That's like 4 or 5 games a week.
Yeah.
What you do is you just, I hate to use the cliche, but you have to take them one game at a time, and you do. And people would say to me, oh, you do the Wizards, that must be fun. And it's like, well, Yeah, it is fun.
It is fun. It's a great job. No, there's no doubt about it. I have friends that do it, and they say in perspective when people say, "Oh, your team stinks, and this must be a hard job." It's a hard job, but it's a job you love. So
absolutely,
yeah.
It was like doing the weekend sports for years. When I first got to Washington, and Bernie was the main guy, and I'm coming in there, during the season, and I'm going to edit tapes, and all my friends are having barbecues and whatever, and they say, "Hey, can you come?" I say, "No, it reminds me of the Marv Albert book. I'd love to, but I have a game."
Mm-hmm.
And they'd say, "Oh, you got to work on the weekends." It's like, yeah, I got to work on the weekends. I got to do television. I got to be on TV. I got to get a lot of perks and free stuff, But yeah, I got to do TV. So it's that kind of thing. You prepare for each game. Like you say, you slog through the season. It gets to be depressing. But for me, and I think I probably speak for the other 29 guys that do TV, each game is a new game, and it's exciting. You go into it with some excitement. You don't go into it thinking, "Oh, geez, we're going to get killed." You go into it thinking just what you said, that anything can happen. So maybe this is the game where we upset the other team, and you're standing out there on the court, you get your adrenaline flowing, you're standing next to the greatest athletes in the world, and you're thinking, "Wow, this is a great job." And then the game starts, and then it gets out of hand. But up until that point, you just prepare like it's another game, and you have fun.
And also the players, this will happen even at the professional level. It's conceivable Boston goes, Detroit. Of course, you don't want to be on the side that ends that streak either.
Exactly, because that saying that anything can happen. So, and look, they're professionals. They shouldn't be tanking or anything like that because it's the Pistons or anybody else. They have a certain amount of pride, and they want to go out and play hard.
Yeah. Talking to Steve Buckhantz, a longtime voice of the Wizards on TV, and certainly knows Ted Leonsis and his operation. And Ted was the villain a couple of weeks ago, smiling with the governor of Virginia, making it. I know you're a Virginia guy, but as one who did those games pretty much from the start of their run in downtown D.C., what was your feeling when this was announced?
I've got mixed emotions about this, Andy, because you're right. I did 22 years. We started at the Capitol Center in 97, but then moved over in December to that building, the MCI Center. And so I did 22 years there, and I have mixed emotions about it because, that was my second home, was going to that arena, 45 games a year. And I like the place, and I think it's a great venue and whatever. And, of course, Abe built it with his own money, and he revitalized all of that downtown area because of that. And so I'm nostalgic. I went to a game a couple of weeks ago with Phil Chenier. We sat there. We went to the Indiana game, which was another game. The Wizards beat them, and it was a great time. We had a wonderful time, and I'm walking. I never got a chance to walk around the mezzanine area because I was down on the floor doing the game. And I'm walking around for this game, and I'm thinking, "Damn, this place is nice."
Yeah.
I mean, they got great food. The concessions are really cool. They had a stand out in one of the exit areas. It was the Nothing Bundt cakes with ice cream, and I thought, "Wow, I would get this if I were here," as a fan. And I just thought, this is really a nice place. So to leave there, and I understand the feeling that people have about leaving. You'd love to have your arena in the city if you can, but not all cities have that. I mean, that's the other thing that people forget. For years in Detroit, their basketball and their football team were a half hour from downtown. They weren't anywhere near it. If you're a San Francisco 49er fan, how'd you like to have to go to Santa Clara every Sunday to see them play, and leave San Francisco? So it does happen in other cities. And it happened in our city. We had a football team here for years at DC Stadium, and then for the last 25 years, they're over in Maryland. So it does happen. And I said I have mixed emotions because, and it's not just because I live in Virginia, but most of the complaints I hear coming from people are coming from my friends who live in Maryland. Most of you guys do. Most of my friends that I have live in Maryland, and they're not excited about having to come to Alexandria. As somebody's put it, though, they're not moving to Blacksburg. They're
True.
moving across the river.
I know, but you are old enough to remember the opening of the Capitol Center, and the Capitol Center was built where it was because Abe couldn't get a deal to build it downtown, which is where he really wanted to do it.
And that's where I grew up going to that.
Yeah.
I mean, even before that, to the Baltimore Civic Center.
Right. So the point being is he worked tirelessly and always had this goal of getting it downtown. He built it downtown. The area, as you say, was revitalized. And now Ted, who is supposed to be this, big civic person, is saying, I know this national airport and it's supposed to be Washington, but it's in Virginia. Not a big deal. And hey, we're going to give you the Mystics and some women's games. And by the way, I'm a big fan of Virginia Tech women's basketball. Who knew? And you can watch those games, and we're taking the Caps and Wizards to Virginia. That's my take on it as a Maryland guy. Maybe I'm going too far, but that's the way I look at it.
Well, so as an astute Maryland guy, I'm curious to know what it is that bothers you so much about them going to Alexandria, aside from just not being in D.C. Is there something else that bothers you about that?
As far as the commute, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference for me living in Montgomery County to go there. But in terms of what I know the crime is up now, and there are a lot of problems around there. But I also understand about our city, and whether you live in Virginia or you live in Maryland, you have pride about D.C., and that's to me is the really disappointing part of it. And maybe over the course of years, it'll be a great place to go watch games and places to go out afterwards and so forth. But it's a tough thing to see this yanked out of D.C. when it took so damn long to get it there.
Yeah, I would agree with you on all of those points, including, if you build it, they will come. I mean, the Capitals always have fans. They'll always be good, and they'll always be competitive, and they'll follow them there. And don't forget, that's the other thing about Virginia. Everybody, disses Virginia. The Capitals' headquarters is in Virginia. Mm-hmm. Their practice facility is in Arlington. Okay, it's in Boston. The Commanders' headquarters is in Ashburn, Virginia. All the players live in Virginia for the most part. Some of the basketball players live in D.C. because of the arena, but they don't even practice there.
Right.
So for them to move over, it's almost a natural thing. They talk about moving the football stadium somewhere in Virginia. It's almost a natural thing for that to happen. Now, can you be unhappy about it? Sure. If you don't want to make the trek across the river, is the traffic going to be bad? Not going to be good. They'll get it figured out. They've got a metro there. They'll have to expand it, and they'll have to do something about the traffic. But guess what? The traffic going to the Capital One Arena is horrific.
I know.
D.C. is horrific at 6:30 at night. I get there at 4 or 4:30, and I can barely get there. So it's no fun going there either. Trust me.
I know. But
I think a lot is being made. I get it. I don't like leaving D.C. either. That's where the team belongs. The football team belongs in D.C. But like the man said, it ain't like they're moving to Blacksburg. They'll be there. And listen, and I haven't talked to Ted about this. I'm not inside his head, but look. He's going to build a complex that's going to be his baby, and it's going to be spectacular. It's not just going to be basketball and hockey. It's going to be concert venue and hotels and restaurants, and he wants to put his stamp on that, and this is his opportunity to do it, and it should be a huge moneymaker as well. So nostalgic-wise, I don't like leaving D.C. I spent 22 years in that arena, but the fact that it's moving where it's moving is, if you build it, they will come. It's not going to break my heart.
Okay. Last thing, and you have been a fan of the whatever name they've been under for the last 50 years or so, and we have followed all the quarterback controversies. As I put out in a tweet, I used to argue Sonny versus Billy at the BCC high school cafeteria.
Right.
And so I've been doing this in 30-plus years on the radio, doing the same thing. I put out that this is a quarterback controversy because there are those who want Sam Howell to play the last two, and there are those who say, well, he's clearly shot now, and you got to play Jacoby Brissett. So I considered it a controversy. Our mutual friend Chick Hernandez chimed in and said it's not a controversy. So I ask you, is it a controversy or not?
Well, I don't think it's a controversy at the level of Billy and Sonny, because back then that was, people were putting out bumper stickers.
Sure.
When the team is as unproductive as this Commanders team is, then I don't think it's as much of it's a talking point. I don't know if I call it a controversy. Why? part of me wants to see Sam Howell continue because I think they think he's the future. I've had people tell me that. I had Doug Williams tell me that. Now, do you want to try to win the next 2 games, or realistically, can you win the next 2 games? Probably not.
Right.
So why would you put Jacoby Brissett in there? Just because maybe at this point he gives you the best chance to win. That is certainly one avenue of thinking. There's no question about that. But for my money, and I wouldn't hold Sam Howell out just because I don't want him to get hurt the last 2 games. You could get hurt in any game.
Right.
So I would stick with him and try to get his confidence back, although those are not 2 teams you probably want to get your confidence back against. But I would stick with him just because I think that they think he's the future of this team, so I would stick with him.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with that, but I also know that the other guys in the locker room are seeing what's been happening with Sam Howell, and if they're trying to win, their best chance to win is with Jacoby Brissett. I don't think there's any question about that.
Right, and the fact that teams lie down, and you don't hear much about tanking in the NFL. You hear it more in basketball, but I think that I agree with you. I think, let him get a break, give the guy a break, and let's get the other guy in here, and maybe we can try to win these games. So I understand that too, but I don't think it's a huge controversy. I think it's a talking point. But at this stage of the way the Commanders are playing and where they're at in the standings, it's not really a controversy.
No, and it's hard to get ginned up about a quarterback controversy when your team is 4-11. So
that's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. And you're playing San Francisco and Dallas. So
exactly.
Whatever.
Exactly. All right. Well, good to chat. Happy New Year to you and the family. And
same to you, Andy. It's good to see the sunshine finally today. That was quite a biblical rain we had the last few days. It was pretty nasty.
I was going to say maybe as a parting shot in 2023, take your licks on the weather people who have been. By the way, Doug Kammerer was frothing at the mouth at the beginning of the winter about the biblical snow we're going to get, and I don't, but we're almost at the end of 2023, and they're looking at 50 degrees for the weekend. So
Doug is a Virginia guy too, and we're friends. And so a couple of weeks ago, when we got the snow that we got, which happened late, and I stayed up for it. I texted him at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was up, and I said, listen, Doug, I got about at least an inch and a half of snow over here, and I said, this has got to be more snow than we had all of last winter. And he texted back, he said, you're right, last winter we got 0.4 of an inch of snow, which, Andy, that's got to be a record, right?
Has to be, yeah.
We have never gone an entire winter in this city in my lifetime where we didn't have any snow at all. We had one trace that morning, 0.4 of an inch. It was on a Wednesday morning, I think, and never again. And I said, and he said, you're right, we got more snow in one night than we got all of last winter, which is amazing.
Well, we're going to get more, but I hope not as much as he says, but we'll see. Anyway, good talking to you. Happy New Year. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
Thanks. That's Steve Buckhantz, longtime voice of the Wizards and someone who has great local perspective, which is always good to chat about. Coming up, it was 65 years ago today that we had a game that changed pro football forever. Details as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
And for Tony today, so roll until noon. If you're just jumping in your car, you miss Steve Buckhantz. Always good to chat with him. We'll have that up later on the podcast at ESPN630DC.com. It was 65 years ago today that the NFL had a game which really changed it forever. I mean, if you want to talk about when modern football began, it began on this day in 1958 when the Baltimore Colts went to Yankee Stadium to play the New York Giants. And it was historic in this regard. It was the first game ever, pro football history, that went to overtime. Like, they didn't really even know what to do when the Colts kicked a field goal with a few seconds left to tie the game at 17. What do we do? How do we handle this? They go, we have a coin flip in the middle of the field, and the team that wins the coin flip has the option of whether to receive or kick off, and you keep playing. It was not like a regular season game, which they have now, where you have a time limit. It's now 10 minutes, used to be 15, but you just kept playing until there was a winner, and this was the first time ever there have been overtime games in playoffs, and two more in championship games since the 1962 AFL championship between the Dallas Texans, who became the Kansas City Chiefs, beat the Houston Oilers 20-17. And then, of course, the Super Bowl 51, where you had that incredible comeback by the Patriots down 28-3. They wound up beating Atlanta 34-28 in overtime. But that's it. And this was the first of them, and much more significant than the others because of the television audience. And this is an amazing thing about the audience at that time. 45 million people watched this game in the United States. 45 million people. I know the Super Bowl gets over 100 million now. 1958, not everybody had a television set, believe it or not. I mean, televisions were common, but they were expensive, relatively speaking, and they were black and white. And so 45 million people watching it is incredible in itself. The other part of it, which is even more remarkable to me, is those days there were blackouts in the NFL. So if your team was playing at home, there was, I think, either 50 miles or 75 miles. There was a radius around the stadium where the game was blacked out. New York is the number one market in the country. So the New York market didn't get to see this game live. And the rest of the country drew 45 million people. And what they saw was an ending which they had never seen before, that you had a game that went into extra time. And it came down to Johnny Unitas, and Johnny Unitas was, at that time, the best quarterback in the NFL, and you could argue that he's either the best or in the conversation for the best. And after taking the Colts down to tie the game in the final seconds, and then the Giants actually won the toss, and the Colts kicked off. The Colts stopped them, and then Unitas got the ball, and he completed passes to Raymond Berry. There's even a play, if you watch this on YouTube, it's remarkable. Unitas has him down at like the 8-yard line. And rather than run the ball there and set up a field goal, because that's all they have to do to win the game, they don't need a touchdown to win, Unitas throws the ball out on the wing. And, you know, if a Giants defensive back is quick enough, that could be a pick six, and that could end the game right there. But he put it perfectly to Raymond Berry and sets it up on the 2-yard line. And it's not 4th down, but it's 3rd down. And it comes down to this. Here we go.
The Colts at the line of scrimmage. Flanker to the right. The ends are tight. Unitas takes. He gives to Amici, and the ball game is over. Alan Amici has scored the touchdown, and the Baltimore Colts are the professional football champions of the world. That's the end of the game. The final score. Baltimore 23, the New York Giants 17. We'll be back in a moment with the final wrap-up of today's game.
That's the national broadcast, so he didn't get real excited about that. Bob Wolf did it on WBAL in Baltimore. I was trying to find it on YouTube. I could not find it, but he says Amici scores, he said the Colts win, Amici scores, because that was the most important thing to get out there, and Amici took it in, and people began talking about the NFL in a way that they had not before, and they described it as the greatest game ever played. Well, it wasn't the greatest game ever played. There were a total of 6 turnovers in this game, 6, and there was some sloppiness, throughout the game, and the players who played in it will say, not the greatest game ever played, but an historic game because it really put pro football on the map. It's been around a long time, but the marriage between television and the NFL was really cemented there. That's what really, and it was eye-opening for people with money like Lamar Hunt, who was watching this game, a billionaire from Texas. He decided that he wanted to put a team in Dallas after that game, and the NFL said, no, we don't want to do that. He said, well, the hell with that. I'm going to start my own league. And he started the AFL, and they had the Dallas Texans, and then the NFL had to react to that, and that's why they had the Dallas Cowboys. And within 4 years, the NFL had a contract with CBS to televise all the games. In those days, there was local television. That's when George Preston Marshall had his network in the South with the Redskins. That's why they were all white. He was racist, and he felt like he would get better television ratings, too, if he had an all-white team in this South network. But by 1962, Pete Rozelle, who came in later, he didn't take over as commissioner until 1960, he realized what was happening here, and he managed to convince the other owners, including Wellington Mara, who owned the Giants, that even though he was going to have to give up some in his best interest because he could get the biggest television contract in the country with the biggest market. He was going to share evenly with other teams, including small markets like Green Bay, and that's what really kept those markets like that alive and really helped to cement the NFL in the consciousness of the public. The payoff for each team, the winning Colts, $4,700 per player. The Giants as losers got $3,100, and believe me, the $1,600 in those days was a big deal. The Colts winning that money made them happy, not just to have the championship, but the extra $1,600 made a difference to them. This was years later, as they did look backs on this. Both of them have since passed away, but Frank Gifford and Sam Huff, both of them playing on the losing Giants team, certainly disappointed in losing this game, but realizing what the game did for pro football.
It was a crazy, crazy day. And they didn't win it so much as we lost it. But out of that grew these sort of bigger-than-life people. You ask most pro football fans who played in the championship in 1958, Baltimore, New York. Johnny Unitas, I remember him, and Charlie Connolly was the quarterback. People remember that game, and that one game in 1958 meant so much to all of us. I wrote a book about it, and it was a fascinating journey for me. And it just kind of grew, and it had such an enormous impact on all of our lives. The people who probably recognized that growth sooner than most were the people on Madison Avenue. The entire advertising world was controlled on Madison Avenue. We did advertisements for anything and everything.
Here's Frank Gifford, all-pro halfback.
Hey, Joe, are you still using that greasy kid stuff on your hair? What else? Vitalis. That's what else.
You don't need greasy kid stuff. Try Vitalis. Smooth, easy.
It was just such a magical time. And it was a new era coming in to pro football, which made it possible for today's television and radio and everything else and bringing the fans. And now we have the number 1 sport in the world, pro football.
Yes, indeed. The Sam Huff and Frank Gifford, two of the Hall of Fame players. There are 17 Hall of Fame players who were in this game. 17 Hall of Fame people, excuse me. 2 of them were coaches, and they were coaches on the same team and were not head coaches. Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants, and Vince Lombardi was the offensive coordinator. Lombardi, a year later, wound up in Green Bay, and a year after that, Landry wound up with the Dallas Cowboys, and both of them went on to Hall of Fame careers for what they did as head coaches, and between the two of them, won 4 Super Bowls, and Lombardi won, what did he win? 5 championships. So he won 3 championships, and then before they had the Super Bowl, and then Landry with the 2 Super Bowl titles. Just remarkable.